Low humidity and strong winds have firefighters and county officials on high alert as conditions are ripe for wildfires.
I've been doing this job for 31 years, and probably in the last 5, maybe 7 years, every year seems to get worse.
And what's behind the worsening devastation of California's wildfires? The president says poor forest management, but fire scientists have a different explanation.
At the center of every cloud drop, at the center of every ice crystal, is one of these particles.
And San Diego researchers are trying to get a better understanding of how particles thrown into the atmosphere by waves affect the climate. A look at the science of aerosols tonight on KPBS Evening Edition. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Susan Murphy. San Diego County is on high alert as strong Santa Ana winds and critical humidity levels have raised the risk for wildfires. I talked to a meteorologist with the National Weather Service in Rancho Bernardo about the extreme conditions.
We have a dangerous combination of strong Santa Ana winds and extremely low relative humidity. Values as low as 1%, almost no moisture in the air.
Winds clocked as high as 85 miles per hour roared into San Diego County overnight, putting emergency officials on high alert.
Because the conditions out here really are such that if we get any fire starts, it is going to be near impossible to control the fires. They'll be fast spreading, explosive.
Meteorologist Dan Gregoria and his team at the National Weather Service are in constant communication with fire officials and emergency leaders, providing weather data and sending alerts when they spot fires using heat sensing technology.
So we have one south of the border here in Mexico that had just started. Brief them on where the especially vulnerable areas are, inland San Diego County near the coastal mountain slopes.
All across the county, hills and canyons are covered in dead and brittle shrubs and grasses that are primed to burn. Gregoria says the vegetation moisture levels have reached record lows.
All year, San Diego hasn't even received 4 inches of rain. That's astounding.
He says this round of fire weather conditions are expected to remain through Wednesday evening, but the region's high fire risk will continue until it rains.
Santa Ana is actually peak in December into January. It's colder then, but that's actually the peak frequency of Santa Ana conditions. But as long as we stay dry, our fire weather risk here in Southern California remains extreme.
San Diego Gas and Electric is responding to the fire danger by cutting electricity to certain areas around the county. The high winds could bring down power lines, which could spark a fire. SDG&E says about 10,000 customers are currently without power. The areas affected include Descanso, Buckman Springs, Julian, Ramona, and Pine Valley. The outages could last until the red flag warning expires Wednesday night. The utility company has opened several resource centers for those without power where you can recharge your phone and get the latest information, as well as water and snacks. These are open from 8 to 6 at Mountain Empire High School, Potrero Resource Center, Camp Oliver Lodge, and the Golden Acorn Casino and Travel Center. The planned power outages have prompted county education officials to close a handful of backcountry school districts on Tuesday. Those districts include Julian Union High, Mountain Empire Unified, and Spencer Valley. Schools in the Warner Unified School District will also be closed tomorrow due to a previously scheduled teacher workday. The Camp Fire in Northern California has killed 29 people. More than 200 others are missing. It's one of the deadliest wildfires in state history. More than 100,000 acres have burned, and it's just 25% contained. CAL FIRE officials say it could be weeks before full containment.
It's down into canyons, obviously up through communities, so we have the wildland urban interface, so a lot of hazards there. So it really takes on a lot of different topographical features. It just makes it hard for crews to access some of those areas.
This is video taken by a nurse at a hospital in Paradise, California. After helping evacuate patients out of the hospital, Nicole Jolly attempted to escape the fire in her car, but she slid down an embankment into flames after she was hit by another car. She ran for it. As she says, her shoes melted to the ground.
And it was so hot, and there was so much smoke, and the ash was flying in my eyes. I just closed my eyes, and I just put my hands out, and I was just running, and I ended up touching the back of a fire engine that was right there. And I knocked on the door. The paint was just melting off of it. I knocked on the door, and 2 firemen jumped out, picked me up, and put me into their engine.
Jolly says when she got to the engine, her pants were on fire. A bulldozer helped clear a path to safety. Over the weekend, President Trump took to Twitter to blame the wildfires in Northern and Southern California on bad forest management. Billions of dollars are given each year, he tweeted, all because of gross mismanagement of the forests. In another tweet, he told the state to get smart to stop the devastation. But fire scientists and firefighters today are saying poor management isn't to blame for the massive devastation. They say it's climate change.
I've been doing this job for 31 years, and probably in the last 5, maybe 7 years, every year seems to get worse. A lot of that has to do with the recent drought and the drought that we're still going through. And with that, that drought killed a lot of vegetation. And so that dead vegetation is prone to burning, obviously. You add low humidities and strong winds, and a fire that would normally burn somewhat mundane now is burning in extremely.
The average number of U.S. acres burned in wildfires has doubled from just 30 years ago. Forecasters expect San Diego to be under extreme fire warnings for the next few days. Erin Calandra has details on how heavy winds will affect those red flag warnings.
The wildfires to the north of us continue to burn. The Woolsey fire is now more than 9,100 acres. It's only 20% contained. And the Hill fire, well, that's 80% contained, and that has burned more than 4,500 acres. We are still under an extreme fire danger across the interior parts of San Diego County, and the air quality, well, it's not good. It will be improving, though, toward the end of the week when the winds shift. So that's something to look forward to. We're under a red flag warning right now. We're seeing wind gusts around 25 to 35 miles per hour, but those could increase to about 75 miles per hour in those canyons and also through the passes. It is extremely dry, only 7 for the dew point in Los Angeles, and in San Diego around 20. So that is adding to the fire conditions here. Taking a look, weather alerts in the purple. We're under a warning again for those interior areas, and here are the future wind gusts. It's going to be a windy night. I'll have details in just a few minutes.
Chula Vista police say a fire at the local offices of a social justice nonprofit was arson. KPBS reporter Megan Burks was there today to survey the damage.
So as you can imagine, you can smell the smoke as soon as you pull into the parking lot for the Chula Vista offices of the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment. And that's because at around 11:40 Friday night, somebody kicked down this doorway. They came into the offices here and sprayed accelerant on the floor, focusing right here where campaign signs in support of Proposition 10 and in support of the National City Rent Control Measure. They sprayed accelerator, lit it on fire, and as you can see, the entire office beyond repair. The organization here says they believe that they were in fact targeted because of their work on those campaigns and because of their work on social and racial justice issues.
The timing of the arson, immediately after a contentious ballot measure that ACE supported, Prop 10 and Measure W, is very concerning. Acts of violence like this must be condemned, and I call on all our local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies to investigate and find those responsible for this heinous act.
We're devastated in some ways by the hate against our movement and against the work that we've been fighting for. But if this was an act of intimidation, we will not be stopped.
Police have already ruled this arson, and ACE is asking anybody with information to call Chula Vista Police Department with information. As for moving forward, many people were here from the community today supporting them, including South Bay elected officials, members of the faith community, and other social justice-related organizations, some of them even offering office space. ACE has called their insurance company, and they are taking donations on their website at aceaction.org/donate, and that's acceaction.org/donate. Reporting from Chula Vista, Megan Burks, KPBS News.
Police have not identified a suspect or motive in the fire. Workers at a downtown San Diego hotel voted this weekend to end a 7-week strike. The Westin Gas Lamp is one of several hotels owned by Marriott International that have been hit by strikes across the country, advocating for better wages and benefits and working conditions. Members of the hotel's Workers Union Unite Here Local 30 rejoiced on Saturday after reaching a deal with management on a new contract. Union spokesman Rick Bates says cleaners and bellhops deserve their fair share of the money pouring into San Diego's tourism industry.
They are fighting for wages that reflect the cost of living where they work, and a lot of these workers can't even live in the city that they actually work in. On top of that, they have to work more than one job in many cases.
The local union is withholding the terms of their new contract until sister strikes in San Francisco, Boston, and Hawaii are concluded. U.S. officials gathered at Arlington National Cemetery near Washington Sunday to observe Veterans Day. The annual ceremony began with a wreath laying at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. This Veterans Day marks 100 years since the end of World War I. The president was in Paris, marking the occasion there. In San Diego, some North County seniors got a surprise for Veterans Day this year. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman shows us the special ceremony honoring former service members.
At a senior living home in Oceanside, 30 veterans are being honored for their military service.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Among those recognized was World War II Navy veteran Robert Cook.
And I made 13 trips across the North Atlantic during World War II, and was all over Africa, Mediterranean, Persian Gulf, England.
Cook stayed in the service until 1968. He still wears his uniform proudly. He joined the Navy after the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor.
My brother-in-law came from boot camp, and God, I liked that uniform, you know, he looked good. So I told my mother I wanted to go in the Navy. Well, she was happier than heck to sign me up at 17.
Cook says his family has a tradition of service. His nephew is currently a United States Marine.
He was a Mustang, came up through the ranks.
Wow, and when was that photo taken? Where was that?
That was last year at the Marine birthday party.
Oh, so you got to go to that?
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I was his guest.
Cook and his neighbors were each honored for their service during a short ceremony on Friday.
Thank you.
I think I've played in every war that the United States with my acting career.
Before Edward Faulkner was making movies with John Wayne and Elvis, he was a fighter pilot.
I thought I was going to be a supply officer somewhere, but they said they were running out of pilots. So I applied and qualified and became a single-engine jet fighter pilot. It's my privilege to have become a veteran, to have served in the United States military. I love this country very much.
Faulkner says he and other veterans often talk about how realistic or unrealistic his old war movies were. World War II veteran Cook still has vivid memories of food served on board ships.
Chipped beef on toast, oh yeah, that was delicious. And Spam, I love Spam. Yeah. But we got good food sometimes, but like 3 days out we'd run out of milk. And then we had weevils in our cornflakes, so we'd fill up the bowl with milk, and the weevils would come to the top, and you'd skin them off and then eat.
Cook and 2 other service members had a plan to get a free meal on Veterans Day.
Bobby, the guy that sang, and another friend of mine, I still have my car here. I still drive. So they want to go to Hooters for lunch on Sunday because they're giving away a free chicken
meal, right?
Yeah.
Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Pulp culture fans are mourning the death of Stan Lee, the 95-year-old co-founder of Marvel Comics. Lee died today in Los Angeles. He created characters like Spider-Man, the Incredible Hulk, and the X-Men, who went from the comics to the big screen in movies like The Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy. And often those characters were written to make statements.
Like the X-Men are basically an allegory for the civil rights movement, and it was made at a time when you couldn't put those characters, those people on screen or in a comic book. So instead he was like, I'm just gonna cheat the system and do mutants, because it's the same thing.
Lee was a fixture at San Diego Comic-Con and other comic conventions, and fans always kept an eye out for his cameos in Marvel movies. His official Twitter account signed off today with his catchphrase, Excelsior. And the longtime president of San Diego Comic-Con has died. John Rogers had been president of the organization since 1986. Under his watch, Comic-Con grew from a small event to a pop culture extravaganza, attracting thousands of fans and celebrities to San Diego for 4 days every July and giving San Diego a multi-million-dollar economic boost. Rogers died Saturday of brain cancer.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, California burning. The death toll rises as multiple massive wildfires rage across the state. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
If you visit other California cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, and West Hollywood, you'll see bright decorative crosswalks under your feet, but not in San Diego. That's because city officials say they're unsafe. KPBS reporter Taryn Mento says communities are pushing back on that assessment.
Vehicles move too quickly on El Cajon Boulevard, says business owner Andy Tang. The operator of Sin Lee Food Wholesale says an artistic crosswalk could help make the area more pedestrian friendly.
Make it more walkable, just more of a focus point to kind of, bring attention that this is it's a great area to start a business, I think.
Beryl Foreman of the El Cajon Boulevard Business Improvement Association wants to make that idea a reality at the intersection near Tang's store. She says a decorative crosswalk could feature a design that highlights the city-designated Little Saigon district.
Sin Lee, Fo King, Chow, Min Ki. That's why we call this the center of Little Saigon district.
And it would also help with fast-moving traffic.
We really do want people to take notice of the environment. And that gives people a reason to slow down, as well as make it much more of a comfortable place for people to explore the Little Saigon district.
But the city of San Diego says it could be a safety hazard and points to national standards that prohibit decorative crosswalks. And the debate isn't just playing out in City Heights. Councilman Chris Ward says the city gave him a similar reply when he sought a rainbow crosswalk to mark the LGBT history and identity in Hillcrest.
We've been trying to figure out creative ways to overcome those objections, so that allows us to make sure that public safety is maintained.
He says he pushed on for more than a year to get the city on board.
We seem to have resolved some of the objections through our city engineer that we'll be able to move forward.
Ward hasn't formally proposed the project, but feels confident and is seeking outside funding.
Now that we sort of have the signal that a opportunity could be approved by our city, we are just beginning that public conversation about specific locations.
The city declined an interview, but a spokesman says it's researching rules to permit decorative crosswalks, and the Hillcrest project would likely be okayed after they're in place. Meanwhile, in City Heights, Foreman is working with the community's council office to build on Ward's efforts. She says the organization already has grant funds in the interest of artists, but just needs the city's green light.
We just need to seal the deal with the city, know that we have a thumbs up to move forward with this project. And with all the partners in place that want to see this happen, I think the rollout should happen pretty shortly.
Stakeholders plan to meet in the coming weeks. Taryn Mento, KPBS News.
Heavy winds expected again tomorrow will bolster fire warnings across San Diego. Erin Calandra has our full forecast.
Good evening. We are still under a red flag warning. It is extremely dry around here. We are talking dew points in San Diego County down to 20. That's dry mostly because the Santa Ana winds are howling. We are under a weather alert here, high wind advisories for the interior areas such as Ramona, El Cajon, all the way into the mountains and the deserts. Now, not the case along the coast, but it is still extremely gusty. These are the future wind gusts, and you can see San Diego's in the 20s and El Cajon reaching 45. That's going to be tomorrow in the early morning hours. Here is the satellite radar. Not much going on as far as precipitation. It is, again, very dry and dangerous out there. San Diego 55 tonight, Chula Vista at 53, and Mount Laguna at 37. It's going to be clear along the metro region, 55 degrees. And we are still under a very high fire risk into our Tuesday. It's going to be cooler in the southwest, but those winds, they are still howling. Here we are. The fire danger is extreme for the interior areas. The temperatures, Oceanside 74, San Diego as well. El Cajon at 76 and Borrego Springs around 69 with plenty of sunshine. Into Wednesday, we're still dealing with those gusty, dry Santa Ana winds. Power outages are expected. Extreme fire danger will continue and reduced visibility. It's pretty hazy around here. And taking a look late week, it's going to remain warm, but the winds, they're going to be dying down. So here we are along the coast. It is going to get warm through Wednesday up to 77, but then we have a change. Not quite as windy toward the end of the week. Temperatures start to drop as well to those low 70s. Inland will reach 82 on Thursday and then down to those upper 70s by the weekend. Gusty conditions in the mountains on Tuesday. Still windy through Wednesday, but cooling down and remaining sunny and less windy through the rest of the week. And that's the case for the deserts as well. Expect to see that sunshine. For KPBS News, I'm Erin Calandra.
San Diego researchers are working to get a better understanding of how the ocean helps modulate the planet's climate. Scripps Institution of Oceanography scientists just landed a second 5-year federal grant that will help them study how the ocean influences climate. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson has details.
The science happens inside this wooden building on the Scripps Institution of Oceanography campus. UC San Diego undergraduate student Ikran Ibrahim got a taste of the project when she was in high school.
It was just a normal tour, and I was leading a bunch of high school students, and they were supposed to be asking the grad students questions.
But she dominated the question and answer session, and her curiosity led to a lab assistant post once she was accepted at UC San Diego.
So it's a very big nerd moment, because I get all excited about it.
Ibrahim stands beside the 30-meter-long tank that nearly stretches the length of this lab building. The flume is designed to recreate what the ocean does naturally.
So we have a gigantic paddle.
The paddle goes back and forth at regular intervals, pushing the water inside the long glass-lined tank. Every push creates a wave that pulses down the narrow channel. That changes when the wave rolls up a ramp about 20 feet from the paddles.
And as it kind of comes up, there's a giant metal ramp that kind of replicates the beachfront as it rises up to the actual beach.
That artificial beach forces the waves to curl and then break.
And once it gets to the actual height of the metal platform, it creates the waves that kind of come crashing, which releases the aerosols that we want to capture.
Aerosols are particles that get trapped in air bubbles pushed down by the crashing wave. The force pushes those bubbles under the water, but they quickly surface, pop, and release trapped particles into the atmosphere. And those tiny particles are what researchers are measuring. Lab manager Christopher Lee says the wave machine is sealed up during experiments, so sophisticated instruments can capture how many particles the wave action creates.
So the purpose of the air ducting that you see on the north end side, as well as the air ducting that goes into the tent and the headspace, is to provide as clean as air as possible.
Lee says running the experiment with very clean air allows scientists to determine how many aerosols are pushed into the atmosphere as the waves churn up the ocean.
It also happens not only on the shoreline, as we are simulating here, but also in the open ocean when the winds are high enough and we're able to generate the white cap.
Principal researcher Kim Prather says the pollution can fill the atmosphere with particles, but dust and sea spray are the two most common sources. Understanding how that system works allows researchers to get a peek at the ocean's role in affecting global climates.
Basically, what we were able to do is bring the whole real-world atmosphere ocean into the lab where we could isolate just the parts coming out of the ocean.
Prather wants to understand how many aerosols are created by sea spray because aerosols can help the planet moderate small changes. She says current global climate models aren't sophisticated enough to account for the ocean's influence when the impact could be significant.
So if things start to get too warm, it could change what it's emitting, which will change the clouds and make things cooler. So there's these feedbacks where the natural system is trying to maintain the temperature of our planet.
Prather says the ocean alone can't compensate for the dramatic climate changes that are already underway, but understanding the system gives scientists a sharper view of the future. The next step in their research calls for the construction of a more complex wave machine, which is already underway. That device will allow her team to gauge how other influences impact the ocean.
It'll be winds, we're going to add sunlight, we're going to add human pollution. So now we can start looking at the interactions between humans and the natural system, but in a more controlled way.
Prather says the resulting research will help scientists understand how human activity impacts the planet's climate. She says it could also greatly improve the accuracy of existing climate models. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening.